Critical path method and program evaluation and review technique. Among several other techniques put together, they constitute the modern tools of project management. Although it originated mainly in the private sector, in the field of construction or for the IT industry and several other places, but gradually all over the world, these techniques, modern techniques of project management, are being incorporated even by public agencies, public administration. Why? So as to improve their efficiency and effectiveness, because in contemporary world, whether it is public agencies or private agencies, all of them are struggling to survive and grow thanks to the application of Darwin's principle, survival of the fittest. So in the cut and thrust of competition, public and private agencies, they are reaching a point of convergence. Perhaps they will never converge, but they have started learning a thing or two from each other since long, more particularly in the last few decades. So PERT and CPM, critical path method and program evaluation review technique, these are some of the most important methodologies, tools and techniques which are being incorporated by public agencies so as to improve their level of efficiency and to bring greater amount of transparency and accountability or some kind of discipline in the execution of various projects and programs. Because public trust depends heavily on the efficiency of public administration, public agencies. So we are going to discuss how these are going to help public agencies or public administration. All the different parts of the world, more particularly those public agencies which are involved in economic activities, they have already started using, since long they have started using these techniques. But in some developing countries, we are still experimenting with these methods. We apply it selectively for some projects and programs of the government. Firstly, you need to understand that every organization, whether it is public organization or private organization, large organization or for that matter a small organization, organizations invariably, the efficiency or for that the success and failure of organization invariably depends heavily on decision making and implementation of such decision. How nicely decisions are taken, how prudently decisions are taken, what is the information base and how you visualize things, how you appreciate the contemporary challenges, what you have learned from the past, how efficiently you are connected to different subsystems to collect intelligence. So decision making and then efficient implementation of decision, a very disciplined, very disciplined execution of such decisions are required for the success and failure of any organization. I don't mean to say other activities are not important, but largely the organizations revolve around the activity of decision making. Their success and failure depend heavily on the what, how and why of decision making and its implementation. Organizations come into existence because of decisions. Organizations are run on the basis of decisions taken at different levels and different positions along vertical and horizontal lines. Organizations come to an end because of wrongful decisions at some places or good decisions but bad execution. They end up losing that organic connectedness with the society and environment, and the organization comes crashing down. So what I mean to say, there are a number of other activities, fine, but decision making and implementation of decision, it constitutes the very core of any organization. That's why all over the world, or the large complex progressive organizations, whether in the government or in the private sector, they have kept on developing ways, means, tools, techniques, methods so as to bring some sort of stability, greater amount of predictability, some kind of discipline in their decision, in the zone of decision making, and to bring similar kind of rhythm or for that matter, that better coordination efficiency in execution of such decision. So this is very much important. It's again this backdrop that we need to understand the significance of PERT, Program Evaluation Review Technique, and Critical Path Method. Point clear? If you have gone through some basic theories, more particularly the theories which are propounded by the scholars of public administration in the decade of 90s, new public management or public choice approach, you must be knowing how the scholars of public administration much earlier emphasized the necessity of incorporating the tools, techniques or professionalism, methodologies of project management that had developed and evolved in the zone of private sector to the realm of public sector so as to improve its efficiency. And the new word and expression became very much popular in the last few decades, that is management oriented public administration. Management oriented public administration, the soul of the government is there, but the body or the technique, method, process of response, all such things are to be inspired by the private sector. So when we talk of management, when we talk about management oriented public administration, it is about administration is there with its deep or profound sense of responsibility towards the society, or justice, social justice, economic justice, political justice. But in furtherance of that, it incorporates and applies those techniques and methodologies which have proved, which have been proved by the private sector to be a very powerful instrument in furtherance of efficiency, economy, effectiveness. So in contemporary world, what is happening? Public administration, public agencies are learning a thing or two from the private sector, more particularly in the zone of efficient management of resources, better execution of plan, programs and projects, and to bring an element of scientificism in decision making. So doing away with that, the element of uncertainty in decision making to the extent possible. So it is again this backdrop that we need to understand the critical path method and program evaluation and review technique. Point is clear? See, governance in contemporary times has become a very complex affair. Governance is a very complex affair. Governance is related to reconciliation of conflict of interest. It is concerned with coordination of different subsystems, different departments, different programs, different projects, different kind of policies. You need policy coordination, you need institutional coordination, and many more things. Governance involves not only dealing with the present, but also anticipating things in future. Proactive, administration, you are required to anticipate things in future, and then you prepare for those things. So anticipation is not enough. It must be accompanied by a very good preparation to deal with such futuristic the scene and scenario. So overall governance has become so much complex that in contemporary times, without application of these scientific tools, techniques, methods and process, one cannot deal with the challenges efficiently, because in contemporary times execution of various programs, projects which involved number of stakeholders, you have limited resources, you have a huge population, a large chunk of society, you need to cater to and all such things put together. Then there can be conflict of interest among different groups and communities. Amid all such adversities, programs and projects are required to be executed. So if you want time bound execution of, if you want efficient execution of the programs and projects, you need to come up with some kind of methodology, some kind of tools and techniques. It is here that the PERT and CPM, these kind of techniques or methodologies are deployed. So governance in contemporary times has become very much difficult, involving number of stakeholders, very limited resources. Then situations, circumstances demanding reconciliation of interest, dealing with the present, then anticipating things in the future. Many things are there. And in the wake of increasingly globalizing world, if you see, the things become far more complex. Why? Because we are affecting others and we are getting affected by others. So whatever thing that you are doing in your country, it will not remain confined to a country only. Because you have to match up, you have to meet the global standards, because you are investing in other countries, others are also making investment in your country. Every country is in the fray to negotiate with the outside world favorably. Getting a point? That the benefit that they draw from your economy, you try to derive more than that from the economies of the world outside your country. So this kind of situation has arisen. So that's why public agencies are under immense pressure, or you can say they have been compelled to adopt this method, technique and process to survive and grow. You are competing with the best in the world. So the competition, stiff competition is there in every sector, and that's why public agencies, they cannot afford to continue with typical bureaucratic approach that you take a decision and you keep implementing such decision. That typical status quo is tendency, incremental tendency. You have various programs and projects, but there's nothing like time bound completion. Gone are those days. These days, all progressive governments have acknowledged the necessity of bringing their administration or public agencies on modern scientific lines without any hesitation to learn a thing or two from the private sector. It is again this backdrop that you need to understand the PERT and for the CPM, critical path method. So before we move ahead, how these things are going to help public agencies, public institutions, first of all we need to understand what is critical path method and what is PERT, that is program evaluation review technique. So first of all you need to understand these are the methodologies of project management. These are the tools, modern tools which are used to manage any project and program on efficient lines. This is the first slide. Complexity of governance in contemporary times demand execution of large-scale projects involving multiple stakeholders and limited resources. Time constraints are there. So efficient, effective project management tools, techniques, methodologies have become very much important. Why? For successful delivery of public projects. CPM and PERT, these are the modern tools and techniques which are used as an instrument for the efficient execution of project. These tools and techniques, they facilitate better decision making, better coordination, better monitoring of the projects being implemented, then proper evaluation of how much you have accomplished and how much has to be accomplished, then how to apply correctives. So these are the tools that we deploy, that we make use of to make things happen more efficiently. Then you have this critical path method and program evaluation review technique. A brief understanding of that is required. Then only you can appreciate how these tools are being used, and these tools should be used by public agencies to improve their performance. The first is your critical path method. What is critical path method? Set aside method. Critical path. What is critical path? That you identify. Critical path method means that you identify the longest sequence of dependent activities. The longest sequence of interdependent activities. Suppose there is an infrastructure project that you have taken up, construction of highways. So you will identify the longest sequence of different types of activities which are to be carried out, so that you could make some kind of calculation that this much of the time, at least this much of time is required for the completion of project. So critical path method is about identifying that critical path. What is that path? That you identify the sequence, the longest sequence of dependent activities. That if I have to construct a highway, the number of activities, you have to make use of man, money, machine, material, lot many things are there. So labor or equipments, lot many things are there. But if you identify all those activities, then activities are required to be placed in a proper sequence. So first of all, the land acquisition, or for that point you can identify in the first stage, what are the activities that you have to talk to the public agencies, the government, what are the requirements. You collect intelligence that for the construction of these highways, then how you have to move ahead, what are the rules and procedures and the laws. So based on such understanding, then you move ahead. First of all, in the first stage, acquisition of land. Then the second stage, development of that land or some kind of basic infrastructure. Then you deploy the workers, laborers for second phase of activities. Then materials and the machines are to be deployed depending on the stage in the execution of the things, because if you deploy machines earlier, then it will not be cost effective. You will be paying for that machines. So when it is required, so you identify different activities. You then establish the sequence of different activities. You decide what activities are to be taken in the first stage, in second stage or third stage, so that everything moves in a rhythmic way. That means there is no wastage of resources, and better utilization of more efficient, effective utilization of total available resources, so that you accomplish the ultimate goal, accomplishment of that program and project with list of input without any compromise with the quality. So Critical path method. Critical path method is about identifying that sequence of dependent activities. And once you identify the sequence of dependent activities, you can easily locate that this portion is more important. In the critical path, these activities are more important. So these are to be taken care of more seriously. Otherwise, there can be delay in the project implementation. And accordingly, you move ahead. It's very simple, nothing like that. You identify different activities, you place those activities in the proper sequence, that is critical path, take interdependent activities, dependencies, and then you identify the critical, the most important activities, most important task. Accordingly, you allocate resources, you prioritize things. The first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage, and these are the activities in different stages. But you identify certain activities which are extremely important or more important compared to others. You prioritize that. And you know that any kind of dilution here, any kind of laxity here would cost us dearly. And accordingly, you take the decision how to allocate funds, how to allocate human resource, personnel. So the fund, or for that matter, personnel, or for the tools, techniques, or technology, how such things are to be utilized in different stages. The critical path method. So critical path method is a deterministic model. You determine things. Is a deterministic model which basically focuses on efficiency, more of efficiency. That the resources are to be utilized in such a way that there is no gap, that something is required, raw material, it is not available, supply has been delayed or something like this. Take the machines, either you have brought the machine too early or you're bringing machine too late. So no, in both the cases you will have to pay use price. So accordingly you identify activities and accordingly you allocate. You identify activities and accordingly based on the priorities you allocate resources. So critical path method. Identifying the longest, this is a deterministic model. So identifying the longest sequence of dependent activities, the critical path in a project, to identify which task must be completed on time to prevent delays. You identify certain tasks which are strategically very important. And then you have, it helps in resource allocation and the time bound completion of project. If the path has been clear, these are the dependent activities. If things are clear, resources can be easily allocated. You can easily identify that these are the activities more important than others. So accordingly, resources are allocated. Resource allocation and time bound completion of the project. Okay. Critical path means that you also make an assessment that if you follow this path, how much time it will take. So things will remain under your control. So basically the focus of CPM is on efficiency, economy and effectiveness. And then you have second tool, that is program evaluation and review technique. Program evaluation and review technique, PERT. PERT. It is a probabilistic model. It is not deterministic, probabilistic model. It anticipates, it examines. Then it examines what kind of delays might take place. Its focus mainly its focus. PERT is a model which focuses mainly on uncertainties. So there are two time-based, the estimates: optimistic model and then pessimistic, and the real time that will take. What is much likely to happen, the most likely to happen. So you make an assessment. It is a probabilistic model. You make an assessment that on the side of optimism, this project can be completed in 6 months or 7 months, and pessimistic side that it might take in a year, 12 months or something, but most likely it is going to be completed in 6 to 7 months, something like this. So you make an assessment, you make an estimate, and you take into account uncertainties like there can be change of guard or political leadership. I would say there can be political changes, there can be environmental changes, some kind of natural calamities, or some kind of public protest, agitation, or the workers' labor strikes, something like that. You take into account those uncertainties and accordingly you accommodate those things, and then you come up with the estimate. So decision makers right from the beginning, they know that these things can happen. If things do not happen, very good, you will complete the project in time. But if this kind of problems, do happen and do take place, then still there will be a lot of opportunity because already you have made an estimation that this might happen. So accordingly, you can come up with the contingency plans. contingency plans. So it's not like that this project is there and approximately it will take 6 months. So straightway you are focusing only on project, you are focusing only on your past experience, but you need to take into consideration the fact that any project program is implemented within the bounds of society, and society is constantly changing. Many unpredictable things keep happening in the political, social, cultural sphere. बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी हो सकती हैं. So accordingly you are required to make little space for that. The things which cannot be anticipated right now, but it might happen. So if it happens, there can be delay to the extent of this. So if you take into account this kind of possibilities, this kind of uncertainties, and accordingly you decide, how much time it will take. So if these kind of developments are taking place, then you will be better placed, because you had this in your mind, and accordingly you had prepared some contingency plans. So things will be taken care of, and the project will be completed smoothly within time. What is clear? So this program evaluation and review technique, it focuses mainly on uncertainties, and this critical path method focuses mainly on efficiency. The efficiency, or this is uncertainties. So on the one hand, you are making use of tools to improve your efficiency and effectiveness. On the other hand, you are making tools to anticipate the things and to deal with uncertainties. If both of them are properly used and properly integrated, overall manner of execution of things in the public agencies, obviously their efficiency level will certainly increase. They will be far more effective. So these two tools are being used by many public agencies all over the world. So the focus of critical path method is on efficiency mainly, and its focus mainly on uncertainty. Point clear? Then you have a role of CPM and PERT in public administration. It's simple: efficient resource allocation. So CPM, critical path method, it facilitates efficient allocation of resources. You identify the critical path, you identify that longest sequence of dependent activities, and in the sequence of dependent activities, you can easily identify which one is more important compared to others, which are more critical compared to others. And accordingly you can allocate resources, the time or the money. You can allocate resources, time, funds, money, personnel, whatever you say, human resource. These things can be allocated. So in this way you can go for efficient resource allocation. Efficient resource allocation is not about allocation of resources equally. It is about proportionate allocation of resources depending on the priorities, depending on the gravity or the significance of the subject matter. Point clear? So efficient resource allocation. Next is managing uncertainty and risk. PERT, as I said, program evaluation review technique. It incorporates multiple time estimates, as I said, optimistic, pessimistic, and the most likely. So it takes into account the uncertainties which might arise in future. Uncertainties in terms of political change, environmental changes, or public protests, all such things are discussed. So it accommodates those possibilities, and accordingly it ensures that the program, despite all those negativities taking place, project is completed in time. So and next we have transparency and accountability. Simply the CPM and PERT, they provide for such a structured decision making, the structured execution, a structured documentation of the process at different stages, resource allocation. From time to time you make an evaluation, and you make an evaluation, you review the things, then you apply correctives. So overall decision making and implementation of such decision is brought within the bounds of so much of regularity, discipline, so much of certainty, that brings a lot of transparency and accountability. Things are very much transparent because everything is there on the paper. The first stage or second stage or third stage, different types of activities, how the different agencies, institutions have to come together. Every stage involves, and different stages involve, kind of interaction among different agencies. What is to be done, how much is to be done by different agencies, what would be the comparative role of different agencies in one particular stage or the other stage. All such things put together bring a lot of transparency and a lot of accountability. Things are there on the paper, and from time to time you make an assessment. So there's little room for any kind of manipulation, little room to hide anything. Everything is there in front of all of us. CPM, but then you have better coordination across departments. CPM identifies dependencies. CPM, as I said, the critical path method identifies dependencies of different activities, and the PERT, program evaluation review technique, is as a probabilistic approach. It deals with uncertainties. Okay, so keep evaluating things, all such things put together. It encourages cross-department communication. When you have CPM, critical path method, and program evaluation review technique at work, so different stages are there, different activities are there. You are also dealing with uncertainties. You are dealing with the bottlenecks. All such things demand cross-departmental communication. So overall, when you have structured execution of programs and projects, then structured execution, different stages, interaction, cross-departmental interaction takes place. So communication is there, and communication is the key to coordination. So with the application of CPM, critical path method, and program evaluation review technique, their execution, it means the moment you start using, whenever you start using these instruments means that there will be coordination, because it invariably involves review, assessment, application of correctives. Then you identify who is doing what institution, this NGO. In any program and project, NGO has to, number of NGOs, they are supposed to do this, or carry out these activities, or the government has this much of responsibilities, the central government or state government or local government. So things are designed so well on the paper that it provides for coordination. Coordination comes because of cross-departmental communication. It has to take place. So better coordination across departments. Then you have strategic benefits. So what are the benefits of CPM PERT? The first is improved decision making. Obviously, decision making will be improved once you identify different dependencies, different activities, different stages wherein the different activities are to be carried out. So who is the actor, and the what role that institution agency has to play, and what will be the level of interaction, nature of interaction among different agencies. So when you have so much of information, obviously decision making will be much better placed. So more informed decision based on project timelines. For everything, there is a time-bound arrangement. This stage has to be completed within 3 months. The next stage to be completed within 2 months or something. So when you have informed decisions, more informed decisions, why? Based on project timelines, risk and resource allocation. So you have project timelines. You also have made an assessment of risk, and resource allocation has also been taken care of. Obviously, decision making will be much better. So with critical path method and PERT, you can identify your priorities, and accordingly you can allocate resources. So decision making on scientific lines, it leaves little room and space for expression of arbitrariness in the decision making. No arbitrariness. Things are more scientific, because every single decision or execution is required to be subjected to what, how and why. What is clear? So it is a scientific decision making on scientific lines, execution also on scientific lines. So to a great extent, what I mean to say that this PERT and critical path method, they make your decision making and execution to a great extent impersonal by nature. It becomes impersonal by nature. You can exercise discretion at different levels to some extent, but broadly within the bounds of predetermined things, rules, regulations, the process, everything is properly documented. So that improves the possibilities of quality decision making and the better efficiency. And next is timely completion of projects. When you have projects so well structured, where the sequence of activities have been identified, obviously this will be completed in time. So timely completion of project takes place because you have means and mechanism to identify any kind of deviation. You arrest that deviation. The things are not happening in keeping with our program, in keeping with our anticipation. You identify the deviation and you apply correctives. So timely completion of project takes place, and obviously timely completion of projects prevents delays and cost overruns and public dissatisfaction. Okay, so it avoids cost overrun when everything is taking place within the bounds of predetermined rules, regulations, method, technique, process, anticipation, or time-bound arrangement. Cost overrun is much less likely to happen. Okay, and that to a great extent, gives satisfaction to the public. So public dissatisfaction will be less, project will be completed in time. It improves or it elevates the institutional credibility of the government. It strengthens the credibility of the government. Better trust and more public trust, more public confidence. Then you have enhanced public trust. Obviously, the point I have discussed: efficiency in project completion and transparency, accountability. When everything is there on the paper, from time to time, decision makers, they release, the reports that after 3 months, this is the state of the project, and we are likely to finish it by the end of December or November. So from time to time, you keep informing the political leadership and the people at large, how things are happening. That builds up the trust and confidence, and that strengthens that organic connectedness between the decision makers, agencies on the one hand, and the people on the other. So better trust, better confidence. Then you have optimized resource utilization. The governments have limited resources, and number of things are required to be taken care of. Obviously, we look for some kind of tools, techniques, and methods so that we could prioritize things, and accordingly, we would like to allocate resources so as to maximize our interest with the same amount of input. This is something which is allowed by CPM or PERT, critical path method and PERT. Critical activities receive appropriate attention due to focus on efficiency. So CPM focuses more on efficiency. It identifies the critical activities, and accordingly resources are allocated. The one which is more important than other will get more of resources, and vice versa. So overall, PERT and CPM put together facilitates the optimal utilization of total available resources. Pointly, lesser chances of resource wastage. And finally, CPM's focus on efficiency and PERT's focus on risk management. They can help public administrators navigate challenges, optimize resource utilization, and ensure timely completion of projects. It promotes efficiency, transparency, and accountability. The higher the level of efficiency, transparency, and accountability, the higher will be the level of trust, public trust, and confidence. The higher the level of public trust and confidence, the easier will it be for the government to bring reforms, to pursue the case of development. Higher the level of trust and confidence, it will be easier. As I said, they are integrally connected to one another. If the government takes tough decisions, because of high level of trust and confidence of the people in the government, the people will endorse and will approve of the most of the decisions of the government. Even if the decision is very tough, it may not be so much pleasant, but because of trust and confidence, people know that such decisions are being taken by the government for our better tomorrow or better future. So therefore, you can say PERT or CPM put together, and among other things, or put together, these modern tools and techniques of project management have proved their relevance in public administration, and these are being utilized, and in the future the government should expand the scope of its application, more particularly in those institutions and agencies which are involved in economic activities. So whether it is IT industry, or for that matter various infrastructural projects which is going on, or various programs being run by the government, social welfare programs, here also you can apply PERT and critical path method, because various programs and projects being implemented by the government related to public health or education or the infrastructure involves government agencies at different levels, central government, state government, local government, number of NGOs or voluntary agencies all put together can achieve that efficiency that can lead to better accomplishment of goals and projects. This is the beauty.